Welcome to Chef Richard's Kitchen. I'm Chef Richard Miller. Today we're going to go to Mexico and we're going to make one of their dishes down there that's kind of a mixture of a stew and a taco. And this is called birria. And birria is kind of a name that, from what I understand, is used for a stew. And the history of it is kind of foggy. But by and large, most people say it came with Cortez and the conquistadors over from Spain when they conquered the Aztecs, or the Mayans, of Mexico. And traditionally, birria is made with goat or lamb. And once again, the favored history of that goes is the goats eventually were way overpopulated, and the conquistadors didn't really particularly care for them anyway. They gave them to the locals, and birria was kind of a name for seconds or worthless or something like that. Well, the locals kind of figured out the barbacoa technique of cooking it long time at lower heats, and they made it extremely good, and it was very tender, very delicious, and of course then it spread. And the two main areas now featuring birria in Mexico are the Jalisco and the Michoacan areas. And they say that there's a difference between the styles of them, and to be real honest, I don't know what that is. So if any of you out there, have had both of the styles and can let me know what the difference is between them, please let this Yankee know, and I'll be more than happy. Either put it in the comments or send me an email at chefrdmiller@AT&T.net. So anyway, let's get going. The first thing we want to do is we want to start out with the meat. And as I mentioned a little earlier, the traditional birria was made either from goat or from lamb. And I'm just using beef. And if you use beef, I'm just using chuck roast. We're going to cook this low and slow, and you don't want to use an expensive cut of meat in there, because even the tough cuts are going to become very tender and juicy. So I'm just using a chuck roast. I cut it in about 2-inch cubes. I went ahead and left most of the fat on, and the reason is because at the end we're going to go ahead and we're going to skim that off, and we're going to use it for something else, and it'll all work out. So let me go ahead, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to turn on the induction heater, and let's go ahead and heat up our Dutch oven. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to brown the meat in the Dutch oven, and then we're going to put in the onions and pretty much saute them in. And then we're going to take them out, and we're going to keep them warm over in a low oven. Then we're going to come by and we're going to use a mixture of dried ancho, guajillo, and de árbol chilies in here. And so the second phase of this is we're going to take and we're going to toast the chilies. It isn't always necessary. I always think it gives it a much more complex and flavorful taste. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to toast them. Then we're going to put them in hot water, steep them for 20-30 minutes, something like that, until they're nice and tender. Then we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our simmer sauce, and we're going to make that by blending it all. We're going to put this back, into the meat, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to cook it low and slow for a couple hours. When that's done, we're going to bring it back out. We're going to chop up the meat a little bit finer, and then we're going to go ahead and we're going to make our tacos. And then we'll go ahead and plate. So This is starting to heat up very nicely. So first thing we want to do is put a little oil. Now some people go ahead and just put the meat right into the simmer sauce, you know, and just kind of let it go ahead and cook that way. Then after they chop it, they go ahead and throw it on a hot skillet, and that's kind of what toasts it. In this case, I'm just doing it a little bit backwards, and then I'm going ahead and I'm toasting it first. Either way, it needs to be browned. Okay, that's about enough here. What I'm going to do is, I'm just going to go ahead, and I didn't put all of it in. And the reason is, that I've mentioned before on this channel, when you brown something, you want to get it brown. You look at the steam coming off of this, you know, from the water inside and the liquid inside the meat boiling out. If we have this too close together, we're not going to brown the meat. We're going to steam it. And that's cooking it. We're not getting all that good flavor. Okay, some of these are well browned. So let's go ahead and take them out. Now, you go ahead and put these to one side to finish. Okay, these are browning very nicely. We're about ready to take the second batch out. We'll give them another minute or so. Then we're going to put our onions in. And I used, this is approximately 3 pounds of chuck roast and a whole onion diced. And I'll go through the rest of the ingredients, the quantities, as we're going through. But remember, I always put the ingredient list up at the end of the video anyway. Now, if you still see a little red in there, that's fine. Remember, we just browned them. We didn't completely cook them through. Now we'll put in the onion. Now we're just going to go ahead and we're going to saute the onions a little bit until they're just, until they're translucent. Then we're going to put the beef back in there. I want to put a little salt and pepper in there, and we'll be adding seasoning throughout the process here. But I want to throw just a little salt and pepper in there, to kind of get things going a little bit. They're starting to brown a little bit, so they're actually starting to caramelize a little. And that's good because that'll take a lot of that onion bitterness out of there and actually brings out the sugars that are in there, and it'll help sweeten things up. Okay, now let's go ahead and put our beef back in. I'm going to put some salt. And some pepper. Now, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put this over on the stove, and let's go ahead and let's prepare our chilies. Now, as I mentioned earlier, I'm using two types of, well, I'm actually using three types. The first is the ancho, and the ancho is a very dark chili, very mild, kind of has a smoky flavor to it. We're also going to be using the guajillo, and that's a more reddish skin. This is a tougher skin. So what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to either blend this a little longer once we start to puree them, or if we have to, we might want to go ahead and just strain them. Now, I've taken each one of these and I've cut the tops off and sliced them down the middle, and I've taken all the seeds and the veins out of these. All right? And so all I have left are just the skins. Now, you'll be able to tell when these are getting done, and some people go by looks when they darken up a little or change color. Personally, I think I go more by when they become fragrant. When they start smelling good, they're probably getting ready. So I'm going to go ahead and turn them over. I don't know if you can see, but you can see these are starting to get a brownish color on there. So they're getting pretty close to done. Okay, let's take these out. You can smell they're getting very fragrant. It's a very good scent. Let me go ahead and put these in the saucepan, because actually that's what we're going to use. Once these are toasted, they're going to go in here. We're going to put water in there, and we're going to wait till the water boils, these steep and soften up, and then we're going to make our simmer sauce. Okay. This is about five anchos and 5 guajillos. All right, now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go over to the detail camera over here, and we're going to go ahead and put these on the stove, and we're going to let them get set to simmer. And I'm just going to take and I'm going to put water in this, probably until it's just covering them, and then we'll go ahead and we'll start the simmer process. All right, let's go ahead and turn on our burner. And what we'll do is, while this goes ahead and heats up and simmers, we'll keep pushing them down a little bit as they loosen up, and then they'll be submerged. Those are starting to get nice and tender. So I'm going to turn the heat down just to a simmer, cover, and let's let these sit for about 20 minutes. They should soften up very nicely. Chilies are softening up. Let me go and start getting prepared, because I need a blender for this next step. So don't go away. Okay, the chilies have softened up really well, and so now let's go ahead and let's process them in the blender. A bit tough. All right, let's come over here and let's go ahead and put our chilies into the blender, and I needed 2 cups of the simmering juice, and that's just about what we had. So now, before we put the rest of it in, let's go ahead and let's try it. Very good, a little spicy, not, extremely, just from the ancho and the guajillos. So let's go ahead and put in some of the rest of our ingredients. we want to put in a 1/4 cup of apple cider vinegar, 4 cloves of garlic, a teaspoon of paprika, a teaspoon of cumin, and a teaspoon of Mexican oregano. Now, what's the difference? I said Mexican oregano. Yes, there is a difference. In fact, they come from a different family of plant. The Mediterranean oregano actually comes from the mint family, and it does have a slight minty taste about it, where the Mexican oregano has more of a very slight citrusy taste. So let me go ahead and okay. Very good. Very good. The only thing I want to do is I want to put just a small amount of heat in there. And what I'm going to do, and if you people don't have Diablo chilies at home for heat, then just use a couple little shakes of red pepper flakes. That's much more common to have around the house. Last but not least, we want to put in about a 15-ounce can of crushed tomatoes. Okay, that's a good simmer sauce. Now, we want to take this and we want to combine our simmer sauce with our meat, and then we want to go ahead and stick it in the oven for a while. So, give me a second to get set up for that, and we'll be right back. Okay, I've gone ahead and I've taken our Dutch oven and the meat out of the oven where I had it stored to keep it warm. Now let's go ahead and let's put the simmer sauce in here, and we've got some additional spices, a little bit of beef broth that we'll put in there. Then we'll let it go back in the oven, and we're going to bake it at probably anywhere between 275 and 300 degrees for about an hour and a half, 2 hours, something like that. So the first thing we want to do is I want to go ahead and take our simmer sauce and I want to take 3 cups of beef broth. what we're looking for is we're not looking for a real stiff consistency, because birria tacos are actually served, they are actually served with a little cup of consomme, which then is the tacos dipped in. So we don't want this too thick, because that's actually what we're going to use for the consomme. So now the last thing that we want to do is we have some additional spices. And for this, I'm going to make a bouquet. And what a bouquet is we're just going to take some cheesecloth, or in this case, some muslin cloth that I have, or they have these little cheesecloth bags. I get those off of Amazon. Since I've got a couple of cinnamon sticks that I'm going to be using in this, it probably won't fit in that little one, so I'm using just a regular hot bag. Everybody that watches this channel knows I homebrew, so I've got these little hot bags, around by the zillions. So let's take, and I want to put in probably about 3 or 4 bay leaves. A couple of sticks of cinnamon, and I also took some oregano that I'm growing out in the garden. And also some thyme that also came out of the garden. And about a 1/4 teaspoon of whole cloves. Now let's go ahead and tie our bouquet now. Put that in our simmer sauce. All right, now let me go ahead and take this over the oven. We'll set the timer for about 1.5 hours, and we'll let it go. Okay, I've got the ovens set at 300 degrees. I just set the timer for 1.5 hours, so let's go ahead and let's just let it bake. So I'll see you in 1.5 hours. Don't go far. I know you want to come back. I want you to come back too. Okay, it's been about 2 hours, and I went ahead and I took the Dutch oven out of the oven, and the meat is extremely tender in there. It's got a very, very good taste. So now it's time to prepare our tacos. But the first thing we want to do is, remember the bouquet that we put in there? Yeah. First thing we want to do is we want to take that out. So I'll go ahead and take that out. Then we're going to go ahead and take it. I've already put some here, but I just want to go ahead and I want to put some of this broth into the bowl here so that we can start preparing the tacos. Now, I took the meat out, and basically I just, kind of chopped it. I could probably have just as easily, shred it like you do pulled beef or pork or chicken or something like that. But there we go. So let me clean off my knife and the board here, and we'll Okay, I've gone ahead and I put the Dutch oven over on the stove there. We have our meat, we have our broth, and what I want to do now is I just want to pretty much prepare the tacos. And to do this, what we do is we just take a little bit of our broth, and put in our taco, put in our shell, give it a minute. We want to take and crisp it up real good on both sides. Alright, now let's go ahead and put our meat on here. And we also, remember, we also have some of those onions and other things that were in there. And now I want to take and I want to put a little Oaxaca cheese in here. Now the last thing that we do is we go ahead and flip this over. Kind of similar to a quesadilla. Okay, put a little more in. And a little Oaxaca. Give it a second, and now fold that over. Okay. Here we have our birria tacos here with the birria meat and the consomme. And the way we serve this is we put some of our consomme. And then we also want to do a little garnishing with this. So bring back my garnish tray. I put just a little bit more cheese on the top, some green onion, a little chopped cilantro, and I probably take just a little bit of lime. And just put that on there very sparingly. Now we can take and put some just put some shredded lettuce. A little pico de gallo. A little guacamole. And a little Mexican crema. If you want, go ahead and serve this with a lime wedge. If you want a little more garnish, go ahead and put a little more cilantro on there, or even a dried chili, you know, just to give it a little better look. And here we are. These are birria tacos with our consomme. Now, last thing that I tell you to do is taste it. And I already have, and it absolutely tastes delicious. Remember, when you eat these, take the taco and dip it into the broth and eat it that way. It heightens it, you know, considerably. So, anyway, now we've gone ahead and we made birria tacos. Give it a try. It takes a while just because you have to get everything lined up and prepared, and there's the getting the beef, preparing the simmer sauce, getting it all in a Dutch oven so you can go ahead and cook it down to where the meat's nice and tender. Then as bringing it out, you have to, you know, do a little cooking and frying of your tacos, but other than your tortillas, and then plating it. Other than that, you know, it's not difficult. It's extremely easy. Just a few steps. Give it a try. I really wish you would, and let me know how it turns out. And if you have comments, put them in my comments or send me an email at chefrdmiller@AT&T.net. Otherwise, I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, give a thumbs up, preferably even subscribe to this channel so you know when the next ones are coming out. For heaven's sakes, remember, always, cooking should be fun. Take care. God bless, and I'll see you next episode.